welcome in. Another week, the Jim Jackson Show. Please follow me at Jim Jackson Show IG, also on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you download your podcasts. Welcome in. It's been a great week. We're starting to dig into the meat of the NBA season. College basketball is off, and of course, holidays are coming up. And I like to start the show talk about like kind of things that have happened during the week. I love to keep things on the court, but it's been a different week, man. Different week with what's going on with the Philadelphia 76ers, with the current situation where they had a team meeting in-house, the interaction between Tyrese Maxey, young up-and-coming superstar, with the team leader, the face of the franchise, Joel Embiid, and the implications of that aspect of that conversation and where it led to. It was inferred. And again, I try to stay away from it's actually this is how it went down and this is why it went down, because there's so many different dynamics to a locker room that people don't understand. So what's reported to what actually happened to the results of it, those are three totally different things. But I think you can find a silver lining in the truth within what was reported. And what was reported, that Tyrese Maxey kind of called out Joel Embiid about his tardiness and not being on time. But then there's other reports too that, yes, that's true, but it's not like it's friction between Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. And I wanted to address the situation and talk about it from a little bit from Embiid's perspective, so I can give everybody an idea and understanding of my thinking, just being in the league and being around it for 20 plus years. We always talk about leadership, and leadership is a dynamic word. In leadership, and the leadership styles of people differ depending on background, how they view their current situations, the structure in which they're in, how they've been taught from a leadership perspective. And the factors are always like your best player should be your best leader. And I've learned, and I think a lot of people learn too, in sports, that's not always the case. Your best leader sometimes is someone that has a different perspective, that has a different voice, and your best player may lead by an example that's different than the vocal part. And I think that's what we got into with Joel Embiid. And I want to backtrack just a little bit to give you what I'm talking about. You're talking about a young man that came from Cameroon, that came to the United States at the age of 16, 17 years old, was a project at the time, went to Mount Verde Academy, then he ended up transferring to a school in Florida, I think it was, in high school, became a top prospect, a 5-star recruit, ended up going to Kansas, played at Kansas, but then had injuries. So he couldn't really compete in the Big 12 tournament that year that he was getting drafted. But then also the NCAA tournament that year, I think it was 2014. Then got to Philly and had the injuries, okay? And finally, when he was able to get on the court, you got a breath and chance to see how dynamic this young man could be. But this is what I really want to dig into, is certain leadership qualities that are entrenched in an individual. They just know how to lead. Some are actually acquired over the course of somebody's lifetime through trial, tribulations, through ups and downs, wins and losses, heartbreak, whatever it may be, to kind of be that leader. And so it's not just one quality. It's not just one way. And in the NBA in particular, I look at Embiid's situation and say, when has Embiid ever been the guy to lead a team, to carry a team on his back coming up? And I think that's very important, because that builds the scars, that builds the mindset, that helps you understand what it takes to make you a great leader. Because if you have to carry a team at a young age, you know what comes with that, how to handle the press, how to handle the locker room, how to deal with coaches, how to deal with players, how to speak with each individual differently, how to handle yourself through the good times and bad times, and how to display that and communicate with that. If you don't go through it, then it's hard to really navigate your way once you get to the spotlight, which is the NBA. So at Kansas, he wasn't really the leader. He didn't carry the Kansas Jayhawks. He didn't play in the tournament. When he got to Philly, he was out because of the injuries. And when he finally came back, because of his enormous talent, all this got thrust upon this young man who was still going through the maturity stage of, one, just getting back on the court, but two, being the best basketball player he could be, and then three, being the face of the franchise, meaning that now you were the go-to, the in-between between the players, the media, the NBA, international, whatever it may be, you were the guy. And that's a lot of responsibility. And to me, Joel Embiid never understood, and that's okay, what being a leader really is, because he didn't have to carry a team. And I say that, look at a Steph Curry. He leads in a different way. He leads more by example. He's probably not the most vocal player because Draymond Green is. But because he had to carry Davidson on his back when he was in college, he understood what that came with being the face. He understood that he had to answer the questions on games and on days when he didn't play well. It wasn't always when things were great that now you could be in front of the camera and everything was A-okay and you can answer the question. You got to answer those questions when things are not going well. You know, you got to be mature enough to understand how to navigate those waters. But only when you go through it consistently do you build up those scars and you build up the repetition in order to go through that. And to me, Joel Embiid never has been able to do that. And that's not a bad thing. So early in his career, when he was kind of immature on some of the things that he was doing, whether that was through social media, how he responded through, different press conferences before or after a game, a lot of that was his still growth as not only a basketball player, but just a man, growing into that. And then the added responsibility of carrying the burden of growing the Philadelphia 76ers. So when I look at leadership and I look at what's happening in Philly, and you got to put some of the blame on the organization too, because at a young age, they kind of gave him everything, the keys to the car. So at that time, you were able to develop some bad habits on decision-making, okay? And if you don't correct those decisions or have somebody there to help correct those are going to manifest and grow into something else. And why I say that is because we're looking at Joel Embiid to be the ultimate leader, but maybe that's not his calling card, and that's okay. Just because he's the best player. You can lead in different ways. There's always a comparison between Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid. Who's the best? I don't think it's a difference. They're both great at what they do. They lead different. Nikola Jokic leads a little bit different. His self-accountability has been there in a couple ways. This year, when he started off bad, not shooting, he called out his team and himself, saying that they need to do better, shoot better, get better. But also, let's go back to COVID. Right during COVID, before the bubble, he made it a goal of his, one, to drop the weight, because he understood that in order for him to be the best player that he could be and also help the Denver Nuggets, he needed to lose weight. And not only did he lose weight, he kept the weight off. That's a form of leadership, okay? So 3 years later, you have 3 MVPs, you have, I think, a finals MVP, you have a world championship, all of these accolades because of that one decision to say, I got to be better. And he led by example, and he's continued to do that by keeping the weight off. To me, Joel Embiid hasn't made that dedication. He hasn't made that commitment. It's the reason why he continues to get injuries, or the injuries manifest itself, because I don't think he's dedicated himself in the offseason. This is just me being a basketball player and watching from the outside and watching his body of work, because his talent is unquestioned. I don't think he's been in the best shape. I don't think he's dedicated himself to diet, to off-season workouts, to dropping to 20, 30, 40 pounds, to alleviate the pressure on his lower extremities, to take the top-heavy weight off, to relieve the pressure on his legs. And I say all of this because we look at this young man, and from all accounts that I do know with people, he's an outstanding young man, wants to do the right thing. But this whole thing in Philly that's manifesting itself, was over time. It was a ticking time bomb until something happened. Now, this is not the end of the world. It's the beginning of the season. But let's be honest. This is a team that we thought, and I thought at the beginning of the year, based on the roster moves, that could compete with Boston. And we still got a long way to go, and not saying that they're out of the mix. But it's not a great jumping off point, starting point. Or maybe it is. Maybe this had to be addressed at the beginning of the season in order for them to salvage what they really need to get done. Because as bad as it seems, they're probably only 3 or 4 games because of the East out of being in that 6th spot or wherever they need to be. And that's the beauty about being in the East. But I did want to take the time to kind of express and talk about the challenges you have when you place a heavy burden on a young man or a young woman because of their talent, but their maturity at the time and their lack of experience doesn't allow them to be the leader that we think they should be. And maybe their best role is not being the voice, but being the talented part and a supporting role to the voice of the person that has a stronger characteristics to be a leader. And there's nothing wrong with that because Steph is the face of the franchise with Golden State, but the unquestioned leader of that team is Draymond Green. I got a very, very, very special guest right now. My good friend, my brother, Mr. D Nice is on the set. Thank you for joining me, brother.
Man, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm glad you're here. You know, it's interesting too because you know, we hang out, we smoke, we have great times, great conversations, whether it's sports, whether it's music, whether it's fatherhood, travel, relationships. We do all this kind of stuff. So when I started the show, I was always talking about like doing things a little bit differently.
Yes.
Not just sports. I know you're a big sports fan.
Yes.
Of course, with the Knicks and everything like that. But you in daddy mode today.
I'm in dad mode, PTA meetings. It's great, though. You know, obviously, we talk sports and everything,
Yeah.
but fatherhood is such a great part of our friendship because we talk about our kids.
Mm-hmm.
So when I agreed to do this, I forgot today was PTA meetings. So, you know, was able to run and do both. And us being a dad is like the best part of my life.
Hold on, but when you go to PTA meetings, do they know it's Derek or do they know it's D Nice?
Well, when they start talking about how we need to have some fundraisers, I think they know it's
They
D
know
Nice.
it's D Nice, right? They always want to dig into. But how does your daughter? How does she handle a lot of that too, from success from her father when you're around?
I think for her, it doesn't matter because she sees the other parents and she's like, oh, that's John Legend.
Oh, because of the school.
Because of the school. And
That's
she'll
right.
see, you know. So I think with me, she knows that I do well. You know, obviously she's been to the shows, but I'm just dad, you know. And, you know, but it's great, though, because all of these kids, man, you know, we've been blessed enough to live out here in California. I'm talking all of us that live here in the sunshine and, you know, you meet good people and good families. Not that good families aren't everywhere, but I've just been fortunate enough to be around some good families while living here. And it's been very inspirational, and it keeps my daughter going and it keeps their mind going and new friendships. And it's just a blessing, bro.
Well, it's a delicate balance, too, between the career, which exploded for you, especially post-COVID, to still being father figure.
Yes.
How do you navigate those waters time-wise? Because that's the most important part. Because you're always, bro, you're in and out more than me.
Yeah.
But how do you manage and negotiate the time that you have to go make a living, but then the quality time with your daughter?
So with that, been extremely blessed to have good family around. You know, even though her mom and I are together, we chose to live, you know, not too far from each other. That way our child will have like an opportunity to spend a lot of time with mom and spend a lot of time with dad. Like, so we kind of split that responsibility, which has been great. Luckily for me, a lot of my gigs are on the weekends. You know, occasionally they'll be during the week if I'm doing extremely like private event. But for the most part, I get to be home, be around my daughter 3 to 4 days a week. And you know what I've learned from this journey of like this part of my journey doesn't belong to me. You know, and I tell people that it's like, look, I didn't put out a hit record. I didn't have a hit movie. You know, I don't have a hit television show, this phase of my career happened because of community and being there for people, you know, and it's been extremely important to me on this part of my journey to make sure that I maintain that. And when I say about people, it's also about my family as well, you know, so I find the balance between doing the right gigs, not doing every gig, but doing the right gigs. And then I get right back on the plane and come back home. So example, if I have a show in New York City, I will make sure I leave the morning of, which is very dangerous because anything can happen.
Right? I don't like traveling on game days if I don't have to.
Yo, man, I will leave the morning of 6 a.m. I'll get there, land my show. You know, I'll land at 3 o'clock. Get time to get to the hotel, freshen up, play a set for 2 hours from 8 until 10, and then I'm back on at 6 a.m. and in time to have dinner with my family back at home. So that's how I play it, and that it's important to me. A lot of clients understand that I don't walk away from every gig, but I will walk away from something where I can't have that time with my family.
But that's a different level of maturity too, because you have an older daughter.
Yes.
Okay, so with me, my older son is 31. I'm a much different father, patient-wise and everything else, my goals to my 6-year-old. But you have a special connection too, because not only she's older, she learns, but she's an attorney and she works with you.
Yeah, she works with me.
So how is that dynamic with your older daughter?
So with my older daughter, this is a great question, Jim. With my older daughter, obviously I was in hip hop during, I won't say during its infancy, but during the early days, what they consider the golden era. And we didn't do financially what most artists are doing now. So what I made back then I wasn't able to sustain that kind of success or even that lifestyle. So with my oldest daughter, I had already lost everything, so I had nothing but time at home trying to figure out life and, taking her to school. I started making money again and being successful when she was roughly around 4 or 5 years old. I started like a creative services agency. So I was able to then reset, slowly make money to pay for her education, to pay for her undergrad, send her to law school. And that journey has been great because without the success of my friends and my family, I wouldn't have known to even go out and to do these things that I ended up doing, to even believe in myself. Because, when this stops, people stop clapping. Yep. You got to figure out what's next in life. And because the clapping stopped when I was so young, I was like 28, 29, actually, no, I take that back. The clapping started up again when I was 29. The clapping stopped when I was around 22, 23.
So from 16
when you first started with 23 with BDP.
Then 23.
Until my second album came out in 91. By the time that run of the second album, which is usually a year, was over, the phone stopped ringing. The money started, I started losing money. I had no residual income coming in, nothing. Plus, we didn't make a lot of money back then. And by 90, I'd say by 94, I was pretty much just broke. And it took me about 5 years to find myself again. And I found myself at a good time when I was able to have that relationship with my daughter. I was able to send her to college. I was able to do all of these things on this journey. And now that she's an attorney, when she graduated, she did work at another law firm. And I just felt like, look, I could have still, I do work with my original attorney, but because I was doing so many gigs from the White House and the Oscars and Super Bowl, I felt like this would be a great time to give my daughter an opportunity to see what it's like with what I'm doing. And then she just ran with it. And we've been working together now for nearly 3 years.
You told me a story, too. We were at our spot smoking a cigar where it was a contract negotiation coming in.
Yes.
And you wanted her, you told her kind of what you needed, what you wanted, but you wanted her to actually go through the process of closing that deal.
Yes, it was important. An offer came through. And by the way, if anyone offers me anything, I feel nothing but gratitude because you don't need my services. You like me, you love what I do, but you can go to someone else. So no offer to me is ever disrespectful. But with this one particular client, like I knew what my self-worth was, and it was like, all right, when the offer came in, she was happy and she was just like, all right, this came through, Dad. Like, I was like, all right, cool. But go back and tell them this is what I require. Are you sure? I was like, yeah, I know what my worth is. I know what my value is. And like, you also got to be mindful that, that person that's booking you may be somewhere else one day. And then they'll always think that they're, it's just business.
Exactly. It's business.
It's just business. That's it. And she went back and she called me back the next day and she was like, everything you asked for, they gave you. And I was really happy to show her that lesson about knowing your worth, as talent, also knowing your worth as an attorney representing your client, and it's been a great journey to just ride this with her.
Well, speaking of journey too, I don't think people realize too how old and what you did at the age 16. So you got with BDP.
Yeah, man.
16. You wrote Self-Destruction.
Well, I didn't write it.
You produced it. You produced it at that time. But you were a part of, and you talk about the golden age of hip hop. And not, we used to South Bronx and you used to rock to that all the time. But when you look back at that time period, and if you've grown so much over the years, what are the lessons or what really stand out that helped you manage and negotiate the new stardom that came along with club quarantine post-COVID?
So young stardom was all based on records. It was all based on, I was a part of a crew, KRS-One, one of the greatest MCs. He was able to write these records that, South Bronx and My Philosophy and Jack of Spades. Mm-hmm. But I was this young kid on the other side that was doing a lot of the beats. I would find the old records that we sampled, and bring them to Chris, or I would program them myself. That journey of like being when you're a part of a group with one of the most prolific MCs, you got to know that you're a role player. Mm-hmm. So I was a role player in BDP. I wasn't number one guy. I had to play my part, and my part was coming up with these ideas for certain tracks. Cool. And I was also the DJ after Scott Rock passed away. So I was the DJ for the group. I knew my role. My role was great. And, I produced Self-Destruction. We sold nearly 1 million copies with that. The BDP albums that I worked on, from By All Means Necessary to the Ghetto Music, The Blueprint, to Edutainment, all 3 of those albums. I did multiple songs on all of those albums. They were all gold. Went gold, which is 500,000 copies, and we toured, did all those things. And then I decided that I wanted to do my own solo career as well. When I was like 19 years old, put out my first album, did extremely well with that. Call Me D Nice. Toured I did 70 City Tour with Ice Cube and Too Short, which was interesting because a lot of times you didn't see that many like East Coast, West Coast kind of like, tours going together. But I was like mad young, and those tours were great because it was like, I was out with Cube, and it was a great time, man.
But how would you get connected with being with BDP and everything on the East Coast of New York? It would be like you would be with a tour with guys from the East Coast or groups from the East Coast.
From the West Coast.
I mean, no, from the East Coast just because of where you were at with BDP.
Oh, yes.
So how did you get with Cube on that tour?
Man, this was all Cube's idea. This was literally all Cube. It was my first tour ever, solo, being on a solo tour without KRS. And it was fun, 70 cities with people actually. I mean, obviously, most of the people were coming to see Ice Cube. Let's be very clear.
Yeah, right.
But I had my show and I had my set, and I was able to grow. And I think because of that, when we talk about where I am now, fast forward. Obviously, I don't rap these days, and most of what I do is all DJing. But from what I learned from them and being accepted by. Not just, look, I got the Keys City and New Orleans and, D Nice Day in Houston. Like, they were playing all of my records. It wasn't just based on BDP. And touring with Cube showed me that, that there's a whole world outside of New York City. And when you learn to embrace them, they will never forget it, And that's how I live my life as a DJ. I don't go into someone's city thinking, oh, I'm just going to play Mobb Deep and every New York hip hop record and Jay-Z. Like, no, I go into each city that I'm in and I know what their music is. And I have a love and respect for their culture. I do sprinkle in my New York flavor. I sprinkle that in, but I give people what they want. Now you fast forward to Club Quarantine. That same thing applies. You know, when I stood in front of that camera for nearly 2 years, I poured so much of myself into that. I gave you everything I could in terms of music. I love music. You and I talk about music.
Yep.
We smoke cigars. We talk music. We're old school. You put me on to the Marvin Gaye album I didn't even know existed. You know what I mean? And I'm like, we talk music. So to be able to share my love of music for people throughout these decades has been, man, you talk about having like something that means so much to you. You know, like I feel grateful that people accept me.
You know, it's interesting because if you tap into kind of your journey, everybody has a journey.
Yes.
We learned it's the ups and downs and being able to accept what comes with it. The highs, the lows, everything in between. But it seems like it brought you to the night we were together at State Social before they closed down LA, the idea of Club Quarantine. You had an idea, concept, but you didn't know where it was going.
No.
And I tell people all the time that the reason why, well, one of the reasons, big reason why Club Quarantine was so successful is because you didn't do it for the likes, you didn't do it for the money, you didn't do it for the fame. What you wanted was people to have a release for a few hours a day or a few minutes a day to enjoy music.
Yep.
That process, everybody grew and loved, and D-Nice, you saved me. But how do you grow through that process during that time?
So the growth happened on a professional side and personally. So on the professional side, as D-Nice, it felt good to be able to remember those days of you know, promoters, which, you know, I have a love and appreciation for anyone that hired me in the past and anyone who hires me now, but there was still limitations put on you. There were some promoters that didn't want to hear reggae. There were some promoters that hated old school because they were 25, but they were putting on these shows. But what Club Quarantine did for me was to show people that, man, it didn't matter who you were, how old you were. It was about the music that was being played, and that every young person loves old school and every older person still wants to feel young and they still want to hear Sexy Red and Drake. Like, it didn't matter. It was about what felt good and what felt good at the time, you know, and I was able to do that every single day to where now people don't look at me as old school. Not to say that, you know, age doesn't matter, but no one looks at me as old school because they know that I play everything. And it's about, yo, D-Nice brings a feeling. I'm not just bringing an old school feeling. I just bring a good feeling via music. On the personal side, it made me realize the importance of my family, of my friends. I mean, I get emotional when I think about those moments of sitting at home during the pandemic. When I moved to LA, to hang out with our group of friends and stay social. You know, I was just looking for a little bit of change. Like, yo, what am I? You know, I was a lifelong New Yorker, needed a little bit of change, and would fly out to LA every other weekend, stay at the London Hotel, go over to State Social, watch the games with you guys, and then leave. I decided that I wanted to live in LA. It's the best move ever that I made because none of this happens for me if I was with my family. I would have been quarantined with my family. I probably would have been in a relationship. My partner would have been complaining, you're DJing all night. My kids would have been running. My daughter would have been running in the room. Dad, like, yo, you know.
So it had to happen that way.
So it had to happen that way because I was isolated. I was by myself. So the music that I played because I still wanted to feel connected to my friends and the people that I was missing. So that changed my whole life, and it made me realize the importance of the people that I know and that I love. And this is not about, you know, people that I met after CQ. There's a different level of respect that I have for them because when people tell you that they, you know, you saved their life, I listen to them and I understand what that means because I was there by myself as well. But I just got caught up in the music. When people were sitting there during that time, there were people in terrible relationships that used the music to escape. There are kids at home with their parents who most times people, you only saw your kids for a few hours a day. Wake up 6 a.m, kids off to school at 7:30, see them after school for dinner.
Time to go to bed, rinse and repeat.
Now you're stuck at home 24 hours a day with people that you know and love, but you don't really recognize these people like that.
Yeah. Because
that's what our routine was, and the music was an escape for them. The music was also an escape for me too, and I'm just grateful that through it all, I learned to love my friends. I don't leave anywhere. If we're hanging out together, I don't leave without dapping you up saying, yo, I love you, man.
No doubt.
I don't leave like that, ever. And that wasn't always me. I dap people up. All right, cool. Good to see you, man. I'm out.
Yeah.
Because of what happened, I realized, man, you gotta make sure that the people that knows exactly how you feel for them.
What's special about that too is that, and I talk about the humility part of it, because it goes from, it seems like overnight, but it wasn't. No. It was a building process, okay, with you and your success. And we live different lives, like 3 or 4 different lives, different phases of our life. And you're in this phase now where all of those experiences have now come together and placed you. Think about it. We were talking about one day, and I knew this, but it hit me. How many presidents you play for? How many?
Man, I've played for, I just did Jimmy Carter's 100th birthday. I did Barack's inaugural ball, and I played a lot of, events for the Obama family. Man, Bill Clinton, I rocked for his foundation. Wait, hold on. What I'm talking about, President Biden. President Biden, yeah, man. I went out on the road with President Biden, with Warnock.
Oh, wait, do you hear what you're saying?
I know that is kind of crazy. No,
seriously.
It is crazy.
No, you're talking about the last 4 presidents. You're talking about in here. We're not talking about Trump, but just, and you're saying it like, yeah, I played for him. But the initial part, bro, from the Bronx, everything that's going on, you're playing at the White House. You're playing at this stuff. Does it get overwhelming?
No, it doesn't get overwhelming. In the beginning, I'll be honest with you. In the very beginning, it was just exciting when I did, when I rocked for Bill Clinton and his foundation. It was like, wow, it's Bill Clinton, and I have so many pictures with him. The Barack one for President Obama, that was exciting because it was 2 parts of it. The first inauguration, I DJ'd the BET ball. So that wasn't like an official. It was the BET ball. It was me, Wyclef Jean, and Colin Powell, and so I did that. But in my mind, I was like, man, but I want
you want to be at the White House.
I want to be at the White House.
Right.
And man, the funny part about that, bro, it was like, I finally got a call to play at the White House. I did the second inauguration. Let me go back. I did the second inauguration. I did
at the White House.
Yeah, well, this one was the inaugural ball.
Ball. Okay.
But I played at the White House once. But it was when Barack was leaving office. BET created this party called Love and Happiness. And it was the Roots. And it was like all of these people, like Janelle Monáe, Common, blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't scheduled to be there. And it was only because Questlove, he was going to be DJing. They had Bell Biv DeVoe, but he was going to be performing. And he didn't want to DJ that long. So they reached out to me because I was already cleared, Secret Service, blah, 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 because I'd already done, presidential events. And I was like, all right, cool. We go to the party. I had to pull out of a party. This was in D.C. Pull out of the party. We're at the White House. And, man, it was sexy, bro. Like, I got Michael Jackson going. I got Donna. Right. I'm keeping it sexy. J and B, blah, blah, blah. And Naomi Campbell came over to me, Naomi and my boy Jaha. And they were like, you're not being yourself. Naomi said, this is music. This is easy music to play. You're not being you.
Right.
I was like, oh, what are you talking about? She was like, you're not playing the way you always play. Play the way you played last week at Dave's house, at Dave Chappelle's house. And I was like, I was mad at her. I was like, you can't tell me how to DJ. Watch this. And I cut off. I remember what I was playing. I was playing Michael Jackson Rock With You. Everybody dancing, the whole room. We're in the East Wing, in the East Room. I threw on. I echoed it out, and I never slam records. I echoed it out, and slamming a record means to go from one tempo to a totally different tempo without mixing those records. So I echoed that song out, and I talked to the mic, and then I threw on these horns. It was Annie Up from MOP. We in the White House.
The White House.
Yo, the whole place went crazy. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's right. Yo. And everything changed from that point on. I went from that into Shook Ones. I'm playing Shook Ones on the wall. I'm looking at Martha Washington on the wall. Like, yo, this is the whole room was crazy. Everything I rocked. Swag surfing in the White House. Like, so I owe a gratitude to Naomi for just calling me out.
But she knew, she knew what it was too, because she knows you and understands the flavor and what you do. And but you adjusted.
I adjusted.
Listen, there's not enough time in the day. I mean, D-Nice, we sat for a long time. My guy got a lot of content, but guess what? Because there's a holiday next week. We got a special treat for you. Part 2 of D-Nice and our sit-down conversation. I mean, we got a lot to cover, but man, it was just tune in. We know next week is going to be special with the holiday season, but part 2 coming next week. Right now, it's at that time of the show where we do things off the court. And I wanted to shift it in a different direction here because I love watching miniseries. I really don't watch TV as much, like just linear TV. It's more miniseries. And I've been waiting for this show to really start and come across, and that's Cross, based on a novel, a suspense drama novel. Of course, it has to do with law enforcement. But Alex Cross is the main character. Aldous Hodges plays the role. Off the hook. I mean, he's a psychological mastermind who's a detective that has to figure out how these crimes are being solved at his own prime. And I'm huge on the drama and suspense. Man, I stay up all night sometimes to my detriment. But to be able to watch that and watch shows like that, you know, my partners and I, we always flip-flop and talk about what's going on, what shows we watching, and stuff like that. So if you got some shows that are out there that I need to check out, please send them to me because I'm on Dune. I'm on Tulsa King. Also, like I said, Cross. What else? Man, there's so many different. I watch so many era shows, like Vikings. I just do all of that stuff. I'm intrigued by all of it. But Cross was my latest one. I think I got through the series in like 3 nights, staying up late, watching my man Aldous Hodges. He came a long way from playing a lot of different roles, straight out of Compton when he played MC Ren. But to watch his growth and then watch what he's done in this show and can kind of be like the lead character, the main character, and watch how he commanded the audience in the scene sets. I mean, great job with that. But I had to shout that out because that's off the court. That's one of my passions too, my things that I do a lot of, which is either on the road or after a game, come home, decompress, have a little something maybe, then have a cigar and sit and watch these shows, man. And sometimes it's to my detriment because I'm up all night, like the next one. But check it out, Cross, if you get a chance on Amazon Prime. All right, and once again, keep in mind, next week is the holiday. It's Thanksgiving. We'll be off, but we'll have part 2 of the Jim Jackson Show with my guy, D-Nice. Take care. Have a great holiday.